NASA's next moon landing now sits at the intersection of three moving targets. A new administrator in Jared Isaacman, a shifting Artemis architecture that leans on both SLS and Starship, and a set of proposed budget cuts from a second Trump administration that could carve into the science keeping all of this honest. That is the real update behind the headlines. It is not just a question of when American astronauts touch lunar soil again, but what kind of program is left standing underneath their boots when the dust settles. Isaacman arrives as a rare hybrid figure. He is a billionaire entrepreneur, a jet pilot, and one of the few private citizens who has already flown to orbit and carried out spacewalks. He is a longtime customer and ally of SpaceX, but in his confirmation hearing he stated clearly that NASA is the customer and SpaceX is the contractor, not the other way around. He promised senators that under his leadership the agency would still aim for both the moon and Mars, and he explicitly committed to flying Artemis with the existing SLS rocket and Orion spacecraft, even while calling that path a short-term solution rather than a permanent highway. To understand why that promise matters, you have to look past the branding and into the physics. Getting a crew from Earth to lunar orbit, down to the surface and back again, demands roughly 9 kilometers per second of total delta V. Every extra ton of mass you push through that velocity budget multiplies cost and complexity. The moon is only about 3 days away, but energetically, it is a high hill. It punishes sloppy engineering. It rewards designs that treat every kilogram and every margin as a serious financial and safety decision, not a rounding error. The terrain waiting at the top of that hill is hostile in ways that posters and CGI often conceal. Lunar regolith is razor-fine, electrostatically clingy, and eager to grind into suit bearings, hatch seals, and radiator tubing. Temperature swings from blistering heat and direct sunlight to cryogenic cold and shadow. Radiation is relentless. Communication delays are short, but still enough to force crews and ground teams to practice crisp procedures. When we talk about going back, we are not really recreating Apollo. We are trying to build a long-term offshore platform in vacuum and dust. Artemis, as it stands today, is a compromise between legacy and disruption. The Space Launch System is a heavy lifter built around old shuttle-derived components and a powerful political coalition in states that host its factories and launch pads. Orion is a robust deep space capsule with a traditional development path. In parallel, SpaceX is turning Starship into a human landing system that can haul both cargo and crew between lunar orbit and the surface. The idea is that SLS and Orion provide a conservative crew ride out of Earth's gravity well, while Starship brings the high-capacity, rapidly reusable hardware into the CIS lunar theater. That hybrid architecture carries risk. SLS has flown successfully but infrequently, and at enormous cost per launch. Starship is still in the process of taming re-entry, refueling, and precision landings from orbital velocity. Their timelines must align closely enough that a crew launched by SLS can rely on a Starship already checked out near the moon, stocked with propellant and tested systems. The more constrained the budget becomes, the harder it is to maintain that delicate choreography of tests, rehearsals, and contingency options without cutting corners. Now add the reported budget plans on top. Early outlines from Trump's team suggest deep cuts to NASA's Science Mission Directorate, on the order of roughly half its current funding, while keeping human spaceflight comparatively protected. If those numbers survive the political process, Mars sample return could be canceled outright. The long-delayed Da Vinci mission to Venus might be put down for good, and the already built Nancy Grace Roman telescope could be mothballed instead of launched. There has even been talk of closing Goddard Space Flight Center, a backbone institution for Earth and space science. On paper, that kind of shift looks like a clean refocusing on practical exploration. In reality, it hollows out the scouting network that makes exploration work. Lunar orbiters map out slopes, boulders, and lighting conditions so that landing sites for Artemis can be chosen with eyes open. Planetary missions teach engineers how regolith behaves, how ice hides in shadows, and how atmospheres erode hardware. Earth-observing satellites refine climate models and give planners real data about how the planet reacts while we pour effort into reaching others. Cutting science to save exploration is like turning off your headlights to extend the life of your car battery. The cultural trade follows the same path. Human missions give you dramatic television moments. A launch, a landing, a voice crackling from another world. Science missions give you charts, spectra, and long, quiet years of calibration. One can be summarized in a 10-second clip. The other demands patience. When budgets tighten, it is always tempting to protect the cinematic events and sacrifice the boring groundwork. The danger for Artemis is becoming a string of beautiful stunts perched on top of a shrinking base of understanding. Inside the agency, thousands of careers ride on how this balance is struck. Picture a young planetary scientist who joined NASA because of Mars sample return. She spends her days designing ways to keep drilled cores pristine on their long trip home, building test hardware, writing papers. Then she reads that the mission might be killed to make room for other priorities, even while leaders talk more loudly than ever about going to Mars. She is left wondering whether she should stay in the field or pivot to a different line of work before the floor disappears under her. Engineers feel a similar whiplash. Someone who has spent 15 years at a climate science division might get a friendly call from a former colleague now working on a political staff, asking for a quote that makes cuts sound like streamlining or modernization. Saying yes might keep doors open but betray the purpose that brought them into public service. Saying no might strain relationships while preserving their own sense of integrity. These are not abstract policy debates. They are very personal choices that accumulate underneath every bar on a budget graph. Isaacman's role is complicated by his proximity to Elon Musk. Musk has publicly dismissed the value of the International Space Station and argued for deorbiting it as soon as possible. Isaacman, by contrast, told senators that he believes the ISS should be kept alive and used as fully as possible while it lasts. That difference matters because what comes after the ISS is still fragile. Private stations like VAST's Haven-1 and Axiom's modules are promising, but they are small, new, and unproven. They can host science lockers, life support experiments, and crew training, yet they still depend on a stable NASA to buy seats, rent volume, and share standards. Those commercial stations are the quiet backbone of a healthy lunar program. A place like Haven-1 can test closed-loop water systems, grow plants in partial gravity analogs, shake down new spacesuit designs on visiting crews, and give companies a reason to invest in orbital manufacturing. Axiom is preparing to launch powerful AI data processing nodes into orbit, where they can chew through streams of Earth observation data without waiting for slow ground downlinks. Together, these efforts sketch a future in which low Earth orbit becomes an industrial park that supports farther expeditions instead of an end in itself. That is why the fate of the ISS still matters. For all its age and cost, it is the only long-duration microgravity laboratory where international crews continually test life support systems, human physiology countermeasures, and on-orbit repair techniques at scale. Letting it simply fall into the Pacific without wringing out every useful lesson would waste a generation of hard-won experience. A deliberate handover where capabilities migrate from ISS to multiple commercial stations over several years is slower and less dramatic, but it preserves the craft knowledge future lunar crews will depend on for survival. For viewers on the ground, though, most of this nuance vanishes into the scroll. Social feeds show Starship test flights exploding in spectacular plumes, artistic renders of sleek Mars bases, and clips of senators grandstanding in hearings. It is much harder to visualize a canceled telescope, a lost Venus probe, or a center quietly shut down after decades. The algorithms reward outrage and partisan spin more than they reward careful comparisons of delta V budgets or cost per kilogram. That gap between optics and mechanics is precisely where bad long-term decisions thrive. The moon does not care about any of this. It will sit where it is, 1.3 light seconds away, bathed in hard sunlight, airless and indifferent. What changes is us. A decade from now, we will either have a sustainable cadence of missions that build capabilities step by step, or we will have a handful of heroic clips from an early landing and a hollowed-out science fleet that can no longer tell us what to do next. material facts of regolith, radiation, and fuel boil off are fixed. Our willingness to respect them with money and time is the variable. The most realistic path forward is not romantic. It would mean accepting that SLS and Orion fly only a small number of times as a conservative bridge, while reusable commercial vehicles take on more and more of the heavy lifting. It would mean protecting core science missions, even when they do not trend on social media, because they retire risks for future crews. It would mean telling the public clearly that there is no cheap shortcut to Mars that does not pass through years of patient, sometimes invisible work around the moon. It would also mean that Isaacman, if confirmed, has to prove his independence from any one company or faction. Supporting Starship as a lunar lander makes sense if it delivers the promised performance, but NASA cannot become an auxiliary brand for a single contractor. The agency's strength has always been its ability to set requirements, verify results, and keep the long view for the nation as a whole. That is a traditional, almost boring role, and it is exactly what deep space exploration needs. For everyone watching from outside, the most useful thing to do is to pay attention to the boring parts. When a new budget proposal appears, look at what happens to the science lines, not just the big rocket illustrations. When a commercial station announces a new milestone, ask what experiments will fly there and how they connect back to Moon or Mars preparation. When leaders talk about greatness in space, listen for whether they are also talking about data, maintenance, and decades, not just glory. The next American footprint on the Moon will be a powerful symbolic moment, no question. But the true measure of this era will be what stands behind that footprint. A healthy science program, a network of working commercial platforms, and a realistic, steadily improved Artemis architecture would mean that the image is not a one-off, but the first chapter of a long, practical story. A program stripped of science, dependent on fragile politics, and obsessed with quick wins would turn that same image into a dead end. The update that matters most is not a launch date or crew assignment. It is whether the United States chooses to treat the Moon as a serious, long-term engineering and science project, or as a briefly fashionable stage. That choice is playing out now in hearings, budget markups, contract awards, and design reviews. By the time the next astronauts stand in the regolith, those decisions will be locked in. The dust will remember which path we chose long after the news cycle moves on.